In 1984, the Detroit Tigers started 35-5 and never looked back. They rolled over the Royals in a 3-game sweep and then took the World Series 4-1 over the Padres. Recently, my friend Jay and I had the great pleasure to interview this guy. That's Bill Scherrer, a lefty pitcher for Detroit, acquired in late August specifically for the playoff push. Tigers GM Bill LaJoie and manager Sparky Anderson wanted another lefty in the bullpen, and Scherrer had been demoted by Cincinnati to Wichita, Kansas. Bill had been a workhorse in 1983, setting a Reds rookie record by making a relief appearance in nearly half the Reds games and picking up 10 saves along the way. He got off to a rough start in 84, but what I suspect Sparky and Bill LaJoie saw was his effectiveness against lefties. In 1983, lefties hit just .158 against him with a meager 400 OPS. But that left-handed specialist is exactly what the Tigers needed to complement the deadly combo of Aurelio Lopez and Willie Hernandez. Despite going from a losing club to the best team in baseball, Bill was not exactly happy about being traded. But once in Detroit, Bill immediately caught fire. In 18 games, he had a 1.89 ERA for Detroit, including a key win in Toronto on September 8th in a 3-game sweep that Sparky Anderson credited as possibly the key series for the season. Bill's success secured his spot on the postseason roster. Unfortunately, that meant someone would be left off, and that man would be Sid Monge, another lefty that Detroit added to the roster. Sid came over in mid-June from San Diego, but down the stretch, Sid would yield a 4.59 ERA in 19 games, and lefties had a 7.84 OPS against him. Scherrer was definitely the right choice. Bill would end up pitching in 3 games in that World Series, including the Game 5 finale. It would be the first of 3 rings that Bill would eventually win. After his playing career, he got a ring with both the Marlins as a scout in '97 and then the White Sox in 2005. Over the course of his career, he played with or for 12 Hall of Famers, and might someday, and maybe should be, Hall of Famers. Here's an interesting fact that I am certain you didn't know. Bill is the only pitcher to ever face both Tony Gwynn and Bill Murray. That's right, Bill Murray. My friend Jay of Jay Average Vintage Collector lives near Bill in the Buffalo area, and he was able to arrange this interview. Bill was incredibly gracious with us and gave us over 2 hours of his time. Now, I've cut a good chunk of Jay and I talking to focus on Bill here, but it's still well over an hour. As you're about to find out, Bill tells stories like Jimmy Leland smoked cigarettes, nonstop, one right after another. We covered too many topics to really try and edit this into a story, and I want to keep as much of this as I can as part of an oral history. It's not every day you get to talk with a guy who has 48 years in the game as a player and in the front office. I've tried my best to mark chapters and topics that you can see in the description. I'm hoping this graphic should help as well. Thank you, Jay. I owe you, brother. And thank you, Bill. It was a real treat getting to relive some of that '84 magic.
I started, like every kid here, you played, now they call it travel baseball. I don't mean to laugh at that, but, you used to play, kids in Tonawanda, Kenmore, you'd play at, whether it was Lincoln or Brighton or Sheridan or any, and then we'd pick up games. And, the guy who actually started me was Mr. Weber, who unfortunately passed as well. A lot of these people are obviously older, but he named the street after Morrison Avenue, which is right across Colvin Field. Now Kenny, whatever they call it now with the airplane. But, we was the Morrison Mets, and it was a local group of guys that played. And that was the first time he actually put me on the mound around, I don't know how old I was, 9 or 10, whatever. And then we won which they called the Grasshoppers. And then we won that. And then I proceeded, to play at St. Amelia's. We won that. And, my mother and they all wanted me to go to O'Hara to follow Jack's footsteps, I guess, because he graduated in '66. First class was '65. And so I went to O'Hara, and then, I played, like everybody else, played all the different sports you could. And, and then eventually, you played in, a lot against a lot of the better players that we used to have Muni, Triple ABAs, and American Legions. And I was off always playing in the summer, so a lot of times I wasn't connected with guys who might have been playing pickup basketball at KJ or some Kemmer Junior, or I was playing baseball. And, and then, God willing, I kept moving on, and O'Hara left. And then who'd have thought that I wouldn't have signed with the Indians, because that was actually my parents' and my brother's favorite team, but it just didn't work out. And I sure didn't want to go to UNLV. I mean, I was lucky that I could write my name, let alone UNLV. Thank God it was a sports oriented school. So next thing I know, I'm on a plane from Buffalo, New York to Las Vegas. And, great program. It was, starting to begin.
Yeah.
Now we know how many guys have come there, Matty Williams later on in life and the Stottlemeyers and all, but it just wasn't meant for me. And then thank God I flew home and coach couldn't believe it
Bill,
at
if
that
if
time.
if baseball didn't work out, what was your backup plan?
That's a great question. And I throw that at a lot of people. Now, like I said, now that you're old and gray and everybody dreams of being, an NBA player, an NFL player, whatever it is.
Yeah.
And I said to somebody, I said, I really would have probably had to gone in with a lot of my family members. I would have probably gone into the military. And the reason why I
Mm.
just needed direction, I was a long hair, rebel without a cause in some cases, opposite, like I said, of my brother. And he was a disciplinarian, playing for Surfastini at UB and everything else, and even playing for basketball. And so I would have probably gone that route. And I can't say I'd be there forever, but it
Hmm.
would have given me direction and, time would have played that. I didn't, obviously, I felt like I was in the military playing with the Reds anyway, with short hair and wool stockings and everything else. So they tried to take a little of that rebel out of me a little bit. But yeah, that would have probably been the direction because I'm not handy. I have a hard time, tying my shoelaces and I can't play the piano. So um, that's why I said, God had to be looking after me because 48 years, I said, how did I do this? Even scouting, nowadays scouting is very hard to get into because of the analytics and everything else. No pun on
Yeah.
that, but to do
Hmm.
33 years of scouting, yeah, I've been very blessed in that regard.
I think you would have done well in sales.
Well, my brother was, CEO and president of Aetna Insurance, which is Northwoods, and he actually tried to get me into it. I actually had
Hmm.
an investment with his brother-in-law was Frank Harris. So it used to be called Harris, Potter and Harris and Tivigen. And then they dropped Tivigen to make Shear. And Potter was a big name around, I guess, the Amherst, Clarence area. So I went down and went through an examination for insurance, and they said he'd be, very good at this. And unfortunately, I know what my brother was trying to do. He was trying to adjust me from the playing days to get into insurance. And I got a call from the Texas Rangers and see if I wanted to, play at, AAA, and was going to go to Oklahoma City. And I called my brother and said, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to take care of me. Don't worry, I don't belong in the real world. And that's where at the end of my career, I was going to Oklahoma City, and then it was Texas, and then eventually with the Tidewater. Then I played in Italy after getting released by the Mets, and then I ended my career in
Oh,
Mexico, owned by the Braves. Owned by the
yeah.
Braves, and
I
then
knew
that's
you were in Mexico. I didn't know anything about Italy. Hmm.
yeah. Well, Italy, Tom Giordano unfortunately has passed, and that was when I was released in spring training with the Mets, and somebody gave me a call, would you play in Italy? And I said, I don't mind. I mean, but realizing that kind of adjustment playing over there, they only played on weekends. And
Okay.
so, and I lived on the, at the apartment over there, right on the Mediterranean. So it was like, 50 miles north of Rome, and everybody there worked, and we only practiced. We practiced. I think we tried to practice every day, but it was after work, and it was actually in a soccer field, and they had a net, and there really wasn't a mound. So I just threw a long toss and everything else. So the
Wow.
games were only on weekends. So I pitched one game. It was sort of like playing, I don't know, like maybe high A. So I threw a one
Okay.
hitter, and then they had an article says ex Reds will play pitch against each other. Manny Sarmiento, who was older than I was with the Reds, and then but I realized at that time, what am I doing here? I mean, nobody knows I'm alive or dead,
Hmm.
and I didn't take their money, and I just fell there. I flew back home, and then I started barnstorming over in Canada, to keep
Wait,
myself.
what year was that in Italy? Like 1990?
That was 1990 because '89
Okay.
was I was playing for Tidewater at the '89, so I went to spring training. Yeah, so that was '89. Yeah, '89.
Okay.
So then I came back and barnstormed, and I started pitching a little bit over in Canada, and they'd give me a few $100 to drive over there to Kitchener, and then and if you won, they give me a bonus of like I think it was $750. And so who do we face? We face Brantford, and it's like an audit, not an auditorium, it's like an amphitheater. They had lawn chairs, packed house, and I find out and realize the owner of that Brantford team was Gretzky, Wayne Gretzky's dad,
Oh, wow.
Gordy. And so we end up winning 2-1. So I always laugh. I said, "Yeah, I've already beaten Gretzky once." And they said, "Really? Wayne?" I said, "No, his father, Gordy Gretzky. I beat him already."
I wonder if we could go through a couple of your career uh, achievements, if you will. First of all, you had 2 career hits. I was wondering, I was wondering if you remember them because
Well, I remember the one, and the only
which
reason
one?
I stay in contact with them because I had 3 starts. That was in 80,
Shotsader?
80. No, I knew you looked that up.
Yeah,
I did not know because him being Danny Johnson was a left-hander and actually pretty good
yeah.
stuff. So I found out I did get a hit off of him. But the other one I started, and Mike Lacoste was starting for
Mike
the
Lacoste.
Giants,
That's
and
right.
Buffy was older than I was, so he was. Or and I never really played with Buffy because, like I said, he was 3 years or 4 years ahead of me. So when I was in
Yeah, I was
Eagle, he was
wondering
in
if you met
AAA.
in Waterbury.
Well, no. Buffy was always, like I said, I signed in '77. So Buffy, about who knows, signed in, or Mike, because his nickname was Buffy, but he was like 74 or something. So he was always ahead of the guys ahead of me. But it was a ground ball. And the one
Hmm.
thing I could do is run. And so I was like one
Okay.
of the 5 fastest in the National League. So if it had a ground ball, yeah, I don't know if it was Kiki Garcia or something, but I beat it out. So I got my
Yeah.
first hit off Lacoste. Lacoste beat me. They actually won that game 3-1. So, like I said, but yeah, it was Mike. But I don't remember shots at her the hit. But I got it had to be an infield single.
It
So
was it was an
was
infield single to short.
it had to be because
Yeah.
I remember facing Teddy Power, and Teddy, threw hard and all that stuff, and he had a really
Hmm.
good break and stuff. Teddy had good stuff, really good career. So Teddy. And like I said, I didn't even have to go up with a bat. That's how bad I was. So he throws a curveball, and I was like pointing a gutting, stick right at his face, and he's laughing. I yelled at him. I said, "Come on, throwing me breaking balls." So the next pitch, he threw a fastball, 95, whatever it was, 96, and they hit a beater, a bouncer. It was a bang bang play at first, and I hear Powers yelling, "That's why I did it! I got dang it!" And I'm laughing all the way back because it was close. It was a bang bang play at first, chopper. So yeah, I
Okay.
always laugh about that. Yeah, but those are the 2 hits. I didn't know it was an infield single. I had to think
Yeah.
it was. I couldn't imagine.
I have
And
to
I hit
ask
one. And
you
I hit one home run. You don't know that, but I
what
hit one home run. Oh yeah. Well,
and where was that?
pitchers have, when in the old days, pitchers hit in the National League. So
Yeah.
we'd always hit before, the regular position players. Well,
Hmm.
with me, I finally hit the ball, Riverfront, hit the ball, and I said, "Oh my God, it's going to go out." And I ran the bases in batting practice. I said, that was the only home run I ever hit in batting practice.
Oh my gosh, could you imagine? That would be
Yeah.
great.
Oh yeah. And well, obviously it didn't count. Nobody knows it. Only
No,
me.
but that would be
You do.
awesome to see
It
that
counts for you.
in BP.
Yeah. That was that was funny. But yeah.
Okay, so I have to ask you, did you get the ball after the hit off Mike?
You know what? I don't think and it probably was given to me. I was never, and everybody, my brother used to laugh all the time, with playing with, or coaches with that I had for 12 Hall of Famers. I always made the comment, I don't need to have a ball or anything signed. I'd rather know who you are than,
Yeah.
have things like that. The only time I ever got a ball, well, two, but the ball I did get, I got player of the game at Yankee Stadium,
Hmm.
and somebody says, you got to be, you're interviewed for the player of the game, and I come over, and who is it? It's Bobby Mercer, and
Oh
Bobby
wow.
Mercer is my favorite player, besides Mantle,
Okay.
but Mantle retired in '68, so Mercer became my guy then. So, and Mercer came out and said, "How do you like the American League versus the National League?" And I was tongue talk. I couldn't speak. So
Wow.
Lance Parrish walked by and tapped Bobby on the shoulder. He goes, "I think that's the first time I've ever seen Sheer speechless." And I said to him, I said, "Do you mind if you sign this ball?" And he's, "Oh, for sure." I mean, he signed it, and I still have it at my house there. And the other one that I thought, last team I played in the big leagues was, Philadelphia. And we were in the locker room, and they said, "So everybody's aware the president of the United States is coming in." I said, "Oh my God." So I'm with Steve Bendrosh and Rock, and we're waiting, getting in line and getting, whatever we were going to get signed, a ball and then take pictures. So he comes in, and Bedrosian and me are getting our picture. And we had our arm around the president, but you could feel he had a bulletproof vest on, and
Oh
he
wow.
signed the ball. So my kids, up, in Phoenix, the trophies and the World Series, the trophy itself, and the team photo and everything else. And so the kids go, "Dad, whose ball is that, son?" I go, "Well, that's the president of the United States." I said,
Was
"Oh,
that
really?"
George Bush or was it Reagan?
It wasn't either one. Bush gave out the rings in '85. But you're right. We're absolutely right. That was true. But as you remember, even though I could say that last team I played in the big leagues was '88 with the Phillies,
Hmm.
it was an ex-president. And so
Oh,
I told the kids, I said, so let me just read the name to you. It's Richard M. Nixon.
really? Okay.
And so we laugh about that ball because besides John Kennedy of active presidents, that's most memorabilia ball because we know the story about Nixon. So that
Uh-huh.
was, but yeah, that's funny. That's funny. It was Richard Nixon. Yep. Like I said, I was really blessed to play with so many guys. I mean, you're not
Yeah.
talking about Ripken, and you're talking about
Hmm.
Concepcion, which I still consider somewhat of a Hall of Famer, and then obviously
Hmm.
Barry Larkin and Tram, and there were so many. Schmidt. I played. Oh, think about it. I played with Johnny Betts, who's considered the best catcher of all time.
Yeah.
I
Right
played with
there.
Mike Smith. Mike Smith, the best third baseman of all time. Tom Seaver wasn't too bad either. And then you obviously have Kel Ripken, who argued, whatever, the record. So I
Hmm.
mean, it goes on with Sparky, and you can go on with
Hmm.
Frank Robinson, and you can go on
Hmm.
with Fergie Jenkins as a pitching coach. I mean, it just for all the craziness of my career, and it really was. I mean, and we all know that. I mean, but to
Yeah.
just to think about being a part of, the Tigers and how blessed I was to be traded over there. People don't realize
No, the timing was
I was in
great.
the minor leagues. So when they
Yeah.
Right.
traded me for Carl Willis, I was sent down. And so before the deadline, I mean,
And you came over and you lit it up in '84 at the end of the season for
yeah,
Detroit.
I
So
did really
made the
fine.
postseason roster probably because of that work you did in September
Well,
there.
and that's why I feel bad for Sid Monty. And Sid, I stayed in contact with Sid a little bit here. And Sid, who obviously played for the Padres, then came over to the Tigers and wasn't active. Sid said, really a wonderful person. No begrudging. You earned the right to be on that active team for sure. So,
Yeah, okay. And Manji was a lefty too, so I know that they
yes,
brought you in because they wanted another lefty to go with
right.
Willie. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And I
Right.
was a different kind of lefty. Obviously, we know,
Yeah.
funky, herky
Oh my
jerky,
gosh.
down under type guy.
I don't
That's
know.
what I said.
Did you ever hit your teeth with your knee? I mean, you're
I can still bring it up right now. I even kid with somebody. I said, "Give me one more chance." Even though I'm 68 years old now, plus. I said, "No, no." My
you had
mother
a
used to always
massive
yell,
leg
"Just
kick.
get that leg up." You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
yeah, that was. It would. You're right. It would actually hit your chest. So sometimes, in some
Okay.
cases, when teaching at Lancelotti's, it's been a while ago, but by hitting the chest, what does it really
Hmm.
do? It backs you up. Versus, it's one thing to kick the leg up and then stay close, but there. No, I never hit my. I don't think I hit my chew. If I did, I'd have probably swallowed my chew. So I don't think that happened.
You came, like, to your point, you came onto that team at the end of August, very end of August. There's no way that you could have envisioned that you were going to be lifelong brothers with these guys.
Oh,
Like,
like I said, the only hint I had was I played ball with a guy named Roger Glenn, and he didn't. I don't think Raj. Big legs, lefty. I mean, he was called him tiny because he wasn't tiny. He was from the Omaha area,
mhm.
and he says, "What are you doing here?" And I started laughing. I said, "Well, I'm in the minor leagues. That's what I'm doing here. I mean, I'm down here in Wichita." We went back to Wichita, and at that time it was Bob Housen, and he was actually in the hotel, the Wichita Royale, and they said, "Mr. Housen would like to see you in his room." And he came in. He goes, "Bill, we've just traded you." And I said, "To who?" He goes, "The Detroit Tigers, and you're supposed to meet the team in Seattle." And sort of got to remember something. I came up on the Reds from '77 to '84, and then so all the coaches I had and all that stuff was, and it was sort of like family. And even for me, even
Yeah.
though it was like, and I remember Ted Kluszewski putting his arm over my shoulder, and he said, "You know what,
Oh,
Billy, the
Clue was
first,
there.
yeah,
Or
he
was
was
he
there
the,
too.
was he the hitting coach?
Well, he's probably hitting roving coach and all that stuff. He was
Yeah.
doing that in
Okay.
Wichita because we left Indianapolis, so it was Wichita at that time. So he said the first trade's always the hardest. And then I
Mm.
wish Ted was alive now too to tell him, now how many uniforms can I wear after 12 organizations? I said,
Yeah.
"Ted, I'm accustomed to this." But they met the team in Seattle. Um,
But
and they,
you were pretty
fine.
angry at the Reds, weren't you?
Yeah.
I said things that, again,
Yeah.
well, and I don't regret anything I ever say, but
No,
I
it's
did say
okay.
I would never
Yeah.
wear a uniform again, ever. And what
Yeah.
do I do?
It's okay.
I signed back with the
Went
Reds in
back.
'87.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was sort of like we had Vern Rapp, who's already been fired. I really, obviously, Russ Nixon was great, and we were the most improved team in baseball in 1983, and then he gets let go. And Vern came in because they felt an obligation for all the years that he coached or something. And he was just getting a watch as a retirement, Montreal first base coach. He was retiring. So Hauser, all those guys gave him, the opportunity to manage. And we know the story about St. Louis. He was gone early with that military type of attitude he had over there. So the veteran guys just told him to take a shit. And the younger guys were petrified. They had to do whatever and so he was very difficult to play for. And I mean, I don't wish Vern Rapp anything against the man in that regard personally, but it was sort of so, and I struggled. I struggled. And then the All-Star break, it was like a 5-man shuffle, and I was sent out. And I just said, I lambasted him, and I said I would never play for the Reds again.
Yeah.
And somebody, Morris always makes the comment, when we had these speaking things, talk about the 35-5. And I looked at Jack, I said, really? I said, I wasn't here. I said, 35-5. I was with the Reds. We were 5-35. I said, are you stupid?
Yeah, it was a crazy start to the year for sure.
They were great guys. I want to tell you the story that you were bringing up about the open arms and everything else. I got to tell you, and I make these comments all the time. I almost felt like for the the brief time I was there, yes, from 84 to 86, and most of that year was bouncing up and down in AAA at 86. It felt like I came up with that club because you were absolutely right about what Sparky does. Sparky was really good with chemistry, makeup. So the people
if he didn't like you, you were gone.
Oh no, you were, and you needed to know your role. And the one thing Sparky had, he had the core, but the other guys, most people would say, well, name the 25-man roster. And a lot of guys would not just talk about, Rupert Jones, and you're talking about Barbaro Garbe.
There's so many little guys that
Marty Castillo. I mean, Marty came up with them, right? But I mean, even guys of trades. I mean, you just think about it. He brought in Doug Bear, a veteran guy that he had core guys and the system, but the system should take credit. Is great. And I totally agree with you 100% about Sparky. I do. But what really the person, whether you like him or not, he was another hardcore guy, was Bill LaJoy. Bill LaJoy is the one that drafted all those guys. And the year that he drafted Tram, remember, I was drafted in the 6th round that year in 76. Tram was drafted in the 2nd round. So the 1st round was Pat Underwood. And that was the year Petrie was drafted in the 4th round, and Morris was drafted out of the 5th out of BYU. So just imagine you had, and the other guy they drafted that didn't sign was also a Hall of Famer, was Ozzie Smith.
Oh my gosh! Really?
Tigers drafted him out of high school.
Oh, okay.
So
and he stayed for the.
Just think about LaJoy. LaJoy's main core thing was amateur scouting. And unfortunately, with Campbell wanted him to move over, and we know I'm going to get into the tightwadding of the Tigers of their era, but because they know more than I do for sure. Lance and those guys can talk more about that. But he would obviously he doesn't get enough credit. And Sparky doing what Sparky did, and we know his World Series in Cincinnati and all the rest. But LaJoy's the one that orchestrated and drafted those players, and they came through the systems with guys like Leland and Gordy McKenzie. I know Gordy because he was he was scouting at one time after he got out of player development, and they had core guys like all of us. Those coaches that taught you something. But LaJoy is the one that drafted him.
You hinted something about LaJoy, and I don't want to know. I don't want to dig into. I never heard anything bad about him, so I don't want to know either.
Well, you shouldn't. There shouldn't be anything bad about Bill.
Oh, okay.
He was
just I thought you said something about love him or hate him, but
what I mean is he was a hardcore guy. This is sort of like asking you how many people loved Bobby Knight or Woody Hayes. It's almost like that argument. If you had those kind of guys around you, you would say, "Oh God, these kids today." Not knocking them, but if somebody even raised their voice, they want that guy out. So I mean, he was old school.
Not to dwell on Sparky, but after the Reds let him go for some reason, I have no idea why. The Reds finished in 2nd and they got rid of him, but he almost went to the Cubs. It was Bill.
See, I did not know that. See, I wouldn't.
Yeah, he actually had an offer from the Cubs, and Bill Joy got on the phone and Sparky took a look at that roster because they drafted so well. To your point, in the mid to late 70s, and he's like, I see like a second Big Red Machine coming. Like they had so much young talent. But
I think it was. What? It's always a disappointment, and for those guys, obviously. With me, I was, like I said,
with one
World Series. Only winning one. Yeah. It's like and guys used to always get into it with me, and I wasn't on that. Like I said, somebody said, the Red Machine. I said when I was coming up, it was a little red caboose. I said our guys were coming up through the transition, and with the Sasky, my best man, my first wedding, guys like that were coming up. Reedus, and so when you try to compare the players, trying to compare which is unfortunate because you're talking about the 75, 76 Reds. Hell, I was still in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But to talk about Tony Perez and Joe Morgan and Johnny
Mm-hmm.
Bench and Pete Rose and not even talk about Foster and Ken Griffey.
Foster,
See, I'm not taking, believe me, I'm not taking anything away. I know we've seen all the the all-time thing that 84 is or 68 is the best teams of all time in history, and rightfully so. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They were up the middle with those two guys and Lance and Gibby, and Chet
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get enough credit for God's sake. Darrell Evans, I mean, even Chris, we had Jack, Willie had his career year, and still, all that stuff. It's really nice.
Well, I wanted to ask you. So you had alluded to the fact that you played with, I think, 12 Hall of Famers. Jay and I were talking beforehand, and I kind of have a side bet with him here. So I want to know who among your former teammates would you place in the Humanity Hall of Fame? Like, who's the best guy? If that makes sense.
Well, that you know what? If I had to pick a guy, and just to
Mhm.
know him and just realizing, and I'm not saying anything about other guys either, because that's really a loaded
No.
question in some cases.
No.
But if you think he's a great player, he's a better human being, and that would be Alan Trammell.
Okay, so my money was on Dan Petrie, but I lost that bet.
Oh, you're talking about, I thought you were talking about 12 Hall of Famers. You said 12 Hall of Famers.
No, like if you had
just a human being. Oh, you mean
human being.
Tiger Dan. I said this many times in a good way. Believe me, I wish I had half of his career. Tiger Dan is one of those kind of guys you hope your daughter marries, because he is just the salt of the earth human being. Almost, I say this in a nice way, so I don't want to take it the wrong way. Some way, sometimes too nice. Like a guy like Jack is a miserable. Jack gets up and looks in the mirror at himself and F-bombs himself.
I can believe that.
That's Jack. But I mean, Jack's a good guy. But the difference between Jack personality-wise is, and I'm not taking anything, because Dan Petrie had great stuff, and Dan Petrie had a great career.
Yeah.
But as a human being, it would almost be he would be too nice.
Yeah.
Too nice.
Do you watch Tiger games now? Because he does color commentary for them.
Oh yeah, I know he does.
Okay.
Yeah, I got his phone. I haven't talked to Danny in a while, or Lance, or some of the guys.
He's really good.
Oh no, he's really good, and it keeps him going. He was doing it actually part time, and then the travel and everything else, and so he's doing more of that. But no, and his kid's still playing in the NHL, for God's sake. Jeff, I think it's Jeff Petrie.
Oh, I didn't know he had a kid in the NHL.
Oh God, he's played like 12 years, 13 years in the NHL. He played.
Yeah, I'm not a hockey guy.
No, I know.
I didn't know that was his son.
Yeah, that's his son. That's his son. Right.
Yeah,
but I think he's still playing. He's still playing though, I think.
Yes.
I
will ask you this about that team though, that I know you said you haven't seen or talked to some of those guys in a while. That 84 team, do you have reunions? Do they do regular reunions with? We had
the 40 reunion last year.
You did.
And I thought the Tigers did a wonderful job. They got the only one that really probably wasn't there that I was hoping was Rupert Jones. But even
Rupert,
Chet, like I said, Chet came, in his wheelchair and everything else. Unfortunately, passed later on. His wife was there. So they did, to be fair and honest, I know it was the Illiches of there. They did a wonderful job flying everybody in. And then we all did different, segments of stuff. They have questions and answers right inside the stadium, in the hallway area. And we had our chairs, and then we had signing, and we had a luncheon and everything else. And then besides, they introduced each one of us at the game, and then took pictures. The guy gave us those Tiger jackets that he not built, but he designed and everything else, and really neat jackets. I've got it at the house. It's really nice.
Okay.
But so they did a wonderful job. So we were there for the 40, and even when because I was still doing the scouting still. And, I was in Detroit, and I remember Gibby in the lunchroom. And Gibby's, as I know, I know the Parkinson and everything else, is not a loving, give you a big hug. If he's hugging, he's trying to kill you. But he even said to me, in the lunch, he goes, "You are coming." I said, "I told you I'm coming." He goes, because he was almost like, "We're all not going to live that long." And I go, "Wait a minute, don't get sentimental on me now. You were screaming and yelling at everybody, even goddamn when we were on the shagging out in the outfield, yelling at you, get out of the way, and everything else. So now, don't get sentimental." And so, but I told him, I said, "No, I will be there," and I did. I mean, I've been there. I don't know what the 5th year or whatever it was. We had other variables that we had too, but no. We all got together, and really and he's right. The next time we get together, if it is the 45th, or obviously the special one is the 50th, Just unfortunately, there will probably be somebody else or more that'll pass, and that's just the way life is, I guess.
Bill, I got to tell you, I was 13 in '84, and Kirk Gibson was my hero. Man, I love that guy. I don't know how many clutch home runs, and there was just, we saw it later with the Dodgers, but that game 5 when you guys won the World Series.
Gossage.
Yeah. Oh, I saw that interview with Gossage where.
Did you see that? Did you see? Because I did that podcast, and those kids, that guys did not a podcast. I actually went there live in the auditorium.
Tiger Talk.
Yeah, it was really. They did the guy goes, "How do you?" I said, "You do whatever you want to do." They had the microphones, but they had footages. I'm not even talking about the thing with the Greater Buffalo, and they had footages of Gossage thing that I never saw.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to boast and all that stuff. I struck him out how many times, and obviously hits the home run. I want to walk.
That's great.
We saw the story. But I didn't know that they were so in tune with that. But I did say to them, what Gibby got was every ounce of his ability. We know he had great ability. We already know about his football days, and he ran like a choo-choo train. And, a guy stopped at first base. If somebody was crossing the line right there, that guy would have been in the first 5 rows because he'd have taken him out. That's just the way we all played somewhat, but especially him. And then once somebody said, to try to, somebody goes, "Did you give him high five?" I said, "Don't even think about high five with that bastard." Because when he did that high five and the helmet comes off and he's he's a maniac. But when you watched him play, he may not have been the greatest outfielder, but he worked at it. He may not have had the greatest arm, but he worked at getting the cut off the Lou or whatever he had to do. So Kirk Gibson, with his injuries and his stuff that he did, the Dodger thing will always be remembered and everything else. So,
even as a kid listening to Al Kaline call the games, I could hear Kaline cringe sometimes when on Gibby's outfield play, but he brought it around for sure. I went to Michigan State too, and Gibby's
my God! So him and Leach together in that Michigan crap, and my kid he liked Michigan State for whatever reason. Maybe because of blue collar town and me being a blue collar guy in Buffalo. I said, no, I'll stay away from that goddamn color. They want to think they put them on their helmets. I said, I don't think I'm going to be rooting for them. But it was, my son had a blanket and everything else over, it was a Michigan State Spartans thing. So it was awesome. Funny when you say that. Yeah.
The end comes for everybody at some point, obviously. Sure. Some of us earlier than others. Some of us it ends in 10th grade, like me. But how did you know when it was time to call it quits? Was it family? What was it?
I don't think it ever, and that's a sad thing I have to say. I'm trying to say family. Obviously, family is so priority now in my life, or even when I was on the road, it's just the way I've lived my whole life. But I think you realize, because people laughed. I remember Max Venable. We signed to invite you to camp with the Orioles in '88, and back then, the max guys would usually get, if you had major experience, was $5,000 a month, and then the split contract itself. You're gonna go to the big league, you get whatever you get. And Maxie got $5,000, and I played with Maxie a little bit at the time with the Reds in Nashville that year in '87. Even though I got over half a year in the big leagues with the Reds. So Maxie and me are in spring training, and Maxie asked me how much did I get, and I said, well, split contract, $6,200 a month, plus whatever big league money was. He goes, how the hell did you get $1,200 more than I did? He goes, who the hell is your agent? And I start laughing. I said, Maxie, with a wry grin, I am my own agent. And he goes, really? I said, well, really, the only time you really needed an agent was either arbitration or free agency and everything else. And so I got a chance to make all the calls and trying to hook up with a team. And you get to the point where you always lambaste your agent. And I understand sometimes, occasionally. But when you're doing it like I did, and I did at the end of my career, you realize how humbling it is, because there was just not even a handful, a smidgen, that might give you the opportunity to play. And so most people don't realize how hard and difficult it is to play in the minor leagues, because everybody, at least in our era, was hungry to try to get to the big leagues, coming up or going down and trying to get back up there. And it took a toll. And in our era, 30-some years old was old. And for somebody to take a whim on me, I had to be much better than who they were coming up through the system, because you have to have development, just like all of us who started originally with any organization we ever played for. So to me, I realized that the hardest thing for that is, what am I going to do now?
Yeah.
You're not trying to fake it, but you're trying what now you have to.
You're too young.
I was well divorced. I had responsibilities there. All of a sudden, here we are going. And that's where I look back, even though a brief time. And that's where I actually started working at Tops, food chain here. And somebody knew, gave me an opportunity, management training. I never worked in the food business. And it was, that's why I have so much respect for the real working class people, especially my wife's father was an iron worker. My dad was a wire chief before people even knew what Western Union was, the telegraph service, for 42 years. So I have too much respect for real people. Not saying we're not real people, but I'm saying is the real grindy people that do grindy jobs. And so I realized at that time, I said, so I'm then on the ground and I put my fist through a box. And the general manager says, I don't think you're management material. I said, I'm not going to quit. You can fire me, but I'm not quitting. He goes, you're fired. I said, thank you. Because I knew I could get unemployment. So it was a realizing thing. And then after a while, I had to keep paying money and I started working for Manpower. And I was living in the city of Buffalo, living with my wife's grandmother's double. And I used to walk over there. Now you're not going to walk around there now because it's a combat zone. It still wasn't great anyway, but I'd walk. And most of the people that worked there were misfit toys or probably had criminal backgrounds, which they're right up my alley. So it was really fun. So the lunchroom, this one guy was sitting there and he made a comment he goes, we had some successful people, baseball players that come out of, Western New York. Tonawanda for sure. Guy pitched in the World Series. And he's looking at me and he goes, just talking. He goes, I don't know if you remember the guy's name, but he goes, but the guy's name's Bill Scherrer. And he goes, did you hear of him? And I looked at him, I said, yeah, I think I know that guy. And he looked at me, he goes, really? I go, I am him. He almost dropped his mouth. He goes, no way. I said, yeah. I said, I'm working stiff now. I need a job. I'm working. He goes, no way. I mean, it must have shocked him. But I tell the story about that. I said, remember where you came from. Sure. Point is, even for us, it's hard for us to comprehend it. But I will tell you this, to be fair, is that I was just, like I said before, blessed to be able to stay in the game as long as I have. And, and we did things as an area scout. I did Venezuela. And I remember even with Dombrowski, back then when there was a separation between, there wasn't a separation between pro scouting or amateur scouting. And, they merged until they separated it back then in the early 90s. And so just because I played in Venezuela, I was sent there to do expansion 15, the whole country, all the teams. And so, and somebody, makes a joke about it now. I said, how did you get all this stuff? I said, I have a hard enough time speaking English, let alone people sending me over there. No drivers, no nothing, getting in planes, flying over to Maracaibo. 6 weeks. I was there when the coup attempt occurred. I mean, there were things that we laugh about now. And I mean, I did everything imaginable. Isn't it funny how things worked out? Being in the right place at the right time to be able to be getting the opportunity to go up the ladder in every capacity, and even the amateur. I didn't do scouting director, but I was cross checker with the Reds. Area scouted for 7 years. Did the Latin America in the wintertime. Did the pro coverage. Did the major league, all 30 clubs and all that stuff. So advanced. So it really. It looks back and I laugh about it. And I passed the pinching stage, but I do sit back and appreciate seriously, and I'm not a complete religious guy that God has given me to be able to do the things I've done. I remember telling Johnny Grubb, I got 4 years and change of service up and down for 7 years. And I laughed because in our time, class 8s versus class 9 and all that stuff. I know the money's crazy now for these guys, and guys who had 10 years or more. And I said, I go, I'm right there with you. And I used to tell Johnny Grubb, I said, but Johnny, I just got to work a little harder to try to get the pensions that you guys have accomplished because you well deserved it for 10 years or more.
Yeah, I just have to. 10's the big number. That's the magic number.
It is. And it's 62 is still the max. Most guys did it in a different age. I couldn't do it because there was a different rule. Our non-uniformal pension was changed somewhat. So it said, they called it double dipping. And it's really a whole separate pension, which actually worked out because I didn't have to worry whether you're fired or you needed to pick up your pension to compensate if you had to work for another team or something. So it really worked out. So I maxed out at 62 with the major league. But it's funny because it was just a blessing that I was able to be some cases the right place, right time, especially the 22 years with the White Sox, because I almost didn't take that job. basically, I was offered an opportunity to go to Philadelphia, and I've never done interviews. So, and I really didn't know anybody in Chicago at the time. And so I said, no, I've already basically, my wife would say, well, why don't you go and just go for the interview? Somebody in from one of the other scouts says, don't even tell them. I said, well, not in this business. You don't tell somebody, it'll be spread like wildfire. So I called Philadelphia and said, listen, I've got an opportunity to go for an interview. And they said, go. I hope you do bad, but go for the interview. So I went there, and I was actually working briefly with the Pirates at the time. She gave them a pitching of a report and a hitter report. Now I was still working for the Pirates. So it wasn't, getting, the private stuff. And, we talked about it, comparisons where the guy would be and where I thought he would be comparing to another player. And so they said, well, if you'd like to stay at the game, I said, nah. I said, I've seen enough games. I get on the plane. I flew back to Buffalo from Chicago. And then they called Philadelphia and says, they are going to offer you a contract. I said, unless they knock my socks off, I'm coming to Philadelphia because I was going to be a cross-checker. Well, I said, I'll give you an answer that night. And by the time it was over, Marty Willover at the time was the scouting director, didn't answer the phone. And I had to make a decision. And I said, Marty, I greatly appreciate the opportunity to work for Philadelphia. And one day we'll work together, I hope. But I'm taking the job with the White Sox. And now we know the story. I became a pro scout 2 years. And the next thing you know, I was working really with Kenny Williams and Rick Kahn for the next 20 years. So, 20 years. So, like I said, timing in life could be said for anything in every business.
Obviously everybody chewed tobacco back then, it seems like. And I know that you and Sparky, I know Sparky smoked the pipe.
Yes.
You never played for Jimmy Leland, right?
No, the only good story, and I just did that, that thing in St.
I saw,
James.
you ran
Did
into
you hear
him at
that
the
story
winter
about
meeting.
him? With him and me. And
Yeah.
anyway, I was at AAA, and that was where, the complexes, and it was in Lakeland, and he smoked more than I did. I mean, even when I see him, when I was scouting everything else, I mean, he would be.
Yeah.
Like I said, he could smoke, and when it says, the first place that everybody realized that you couldn't smoke was the Metrodome. They used to have that, the intercom going, no smoking in the Metrodome. And like, I can't hear, I don't have earplugs. I don't know what they're saying. So, but he would smoke anytime. So it wasn't going to stop Jimmy Leland from smoking. Well, anyway, he was managing the AAA team. And then I was struggling, command, and everything else, those open complex. And all of a sudden, by the time I walked maybe 2 or 3 guys, couldn't get the ball over the plate. He just got up and goes, okay, my boys have had enough. We're leaving. It's over. And I'm standing on the mound. And so I always laugh about, Leland. I didn't start chewing really until I think I got to the big leagues because, we didn't have the money in the minor leagues. And I don't remember, if guys did or didn't, maybe we tried it. But when you got, and I was, whether it was dip, you had Copenhagen or you had Skoll or you had, other, there might be, other brands, but those come to mind because they're the 2 main ones. But yeah, some guys would wrap it around in bubble gum, and some guys, some guys like sunflower seeds. Some guys never got into it. And unfortunately for me, I was a smoker, and still do. And again, that's stupid, and it is understandable. That's one thing I wish I would have regretted never to smoke. But I did. And then chewing became the substitute because when you're on the mound or in the bullpen, I couldn't have a cigarette in the bullpen. Now, the only one I will say that did that, because I'd look forward to after a game to have a cigarette, was when I was teammates with Ken Tekulve, and we're in Philadelphia. And then the old Veteran Stadium, you could go in there, and I had a lighter and a pack of cigarettes. After the game, I said, I don't even need one. I already smoked a pack with Teak and myself out in the bullpen. I said, I didn't even need, it was like, oh my God. So I look forward to spitting the chew out in the dip. And, and you bring up a good point because I still remember in 1985, they had doctors come into Lakeland and in the locker room and everything else. And that's when Gibson, he took the money out of my thing. I was getting a lot of letters, quitting smoking. I was still, chewing and dipping. And Gibby had always teased me, well, let's have a cigarette, and, Jesus, and so Gibby would just keep antagonizing it almost to win the bet. So we get the films and the doctor in there, and we're in our cubby holes and showing the slides, and he's showing the tongue and how they tear it open, how the gums. I mean, it was just disgusting. And Willie's over there throwing granules into his mouth.
Oh yeah, Willie always had that massive chew.
Oh yes, and and it was like, and he dipped too as well. But yeah, he had the chew. But I'm thinking to myself, oh my God! I said, I can't. I said, looked at Schmeichel, who was still at that time, well, just recently, the equipment manager. I said, Schmake, do me a favor, go get me a carton of Marlboro. I mean, because the doctor even said, and they're both evils, so make sure you understand this.
Yeah.
But I prefer, if you're going to do either one, when you get oral cancer and everything else, it is just your gums, your teeth, the dripping into your lungs, everything. I mean, it was disgusting.
Yeah.
Yes, disgusting. And so, again, that was, and the other time I did it was Cincinnati, and I didn't smoke all year until we got to Atlanta. And that was Johnny Bench, bet me $100. Now, mind you, chewing and dipping, I get it.
Johnny Bench bet you $100 for what?
To not smoke. And I didn't cheat. Well, Gibby got me one time because Tram saw me smoking, and then Gibby, we went into the locker or something, and I go to my cubby hole, and he's got a little letter. He goes, "Don't worry, I've taken the 100 out of your wallet already." So I would have paid him anyway.
That's hilarious.
But Bench said, we'll bet you $100, and it was the last series, and that's all it had to be. And Bench, gave me $100, and I just looked at Bernie Stowe at the time. He was also years of pioneer with the Reds, and I said, "Bernie, go get me a carton of Marlboro." And Bench looked at me and he said, "You really got me there." I said, "I wanted to see if you could live to 40. Well, when I turned 40, 40, I called Bench. I said, "JB, I just turned 40. He goes,
Nice.
"You are out of your mind." So every year, I talked to him last year and everything else. Now that he's got his kids over in Boca and they're playing tennis, and love them. But yeah, and we laugh about it, and I didn't understand what he was doing. They were trying to quit a nasty habit on both.
Yeah, he's trying to help you.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Hey, first of all, I'm a huge Teak fan too. My gosh, you have the similar build. I don't know how tall he is, but yeah. Gosh,
well, no, he's same height. He did a lot of those color stuff and a lot of stuff on with the Pirates, and I used to see Teak in the lunchroom and everything else. And unfortunately, he's passed too. And
wait, he passed away? No, I saw him. I don't think so. Because I saw him just
he had that lung problem or some kidney thing. Didn't he have a lot of different? Okay, so God, he killed me.
No, he didn't. Yeah, I'll edit that out. But he was
inducted. No, for God's sake, don't do that one. I don't want to hear that Scherrer. I can hear somebody says, "Teak just got your number." I said, "Wait a minute, I'm alive." I said, I'll see you in Pittsburgh. I'll see you.
I saw him last year.
Okay, good.
I went to a game at PNC, and he was inducted into the Pirates Hall of Fame.
Right,
so
that's right.
Cool.
That seems like everybody else I talk about is passed. With Parker, he finally gets in and he passes.
Well, Willie Hernandez, Aurelio Rodriguez, Chet Lemon,
and obviously Bergie, and Dwight Lowry. Even though people don't like Lowry,
Bergman passed.
Oh, he's been dead for years. Dave died. He was fighting some kind of, I can't really know what kind of cancer, but Bergie. When we had our 40th reunion, they had us on the field and everything else. His wife was there, but Bergie died years ago. Years ago. So Bergie, and then you got all the coaches excluding Trixie. Trixie looks as good as ever, and 90-some years old. So he's still.
I was rewatching parts of the World Series, and that guy looked like he was still in playing shape. Dick Trzeski.
Oh no, he looked it. Like I said, it was nice seeing all the guys there.
Yep, we got it.
Is that Lope?
That's Lope.
Yeah. That's Lope.
This is Game 2, 1984. Right. I want to ask you, because there's something specific that happens here. You come in for Lopez in Game 2. Okay, so Chet caught that. Oh no, Chet caught that ball. Tigers come up. I think we go down 1-2-3. I say we because I'm a member.
That's Hawkins, right? Andy Hawkins.
Is that who that is?
That's Andy Hawkins, I think.
Okay.
That doesn't matter.
The resolution is so bad. Going back, but look at Lance. Look how young he was.
Yes, he is. He still looks pretty good. He's just got old, but he still looks like Lance, actually.
I haven't seen him. I know he released a book, I think, last year.
Yeah, he told me. Yeah, he told me.
Darrell Evans.
Yeah. Yes, Darrell. Darrell looks the same. Darrell.
Oh, here we go. Here's the guy.
Oh no.
Okay. Tell me, can you guys hear the audio?
No
Tony
audio.
Gwynn.
No, you don't hear the audio, Jay?
No.
Bummer.
Oh, that's in San Diego. That's right. Is this the infield single he got, or whatever it was? He got a hit. I think he got a hit.
So, you actually had a pretty good record against Gwynn, considering. I mean, I think he was 3 of 9 against you. You
got an infield single. I think I didn't cover the bag.
You didn't cover the bag.
This is where I picked him off, though.
Yes, you did.
Yes, right afterwards.
So,
yep.
I fell off third base side, and Gwynn ran better until he got heavier. But I was. That's typical of me on the ground again.
So Gwynn was.
Oh, it was a bunt. He bunted.
Yeah,
Oh, I
That's what
didn't.
it was.
I thought it was a swinging bunt. Okay,
I
he
thought so
actually
too.
bunted.
Yeah, he did bunt.
Is this Terry Kennedy?
Garvey.
Oh, this is Garvey. Okay. See, I can't even tell from the low resolution. Garvey, also a fellow Spartan alum.
Yeah, see that one I wouldn't. You know what? I should have, but I didn't remember. I don't remember that one. I usually try not to forget anything, but I didn't really know that Garvey went to Michigan State.
Yeah, Garvey and Gibby, Robin Roberts. We don't have too many MLB greats, but because there's something specific I want to ask you about. First of all, look how young you were. Look at that hair. You had kind of a Mark Fidrich look to you.
Well, you know what I did is with Cincinnati, when I finally got tired of it, I got permed. They made buttons in Cincinnati called a Q-tip. So it's as skinny as a Q-tip, so with all the fizzle. So they had.
I could see that.
Yeah. So yeah, but yeah, it's. Well, that was look back. It was what I was 26, right? 26 years old.
All right, let me skip past this. I'm sorry. There was no way for. Oh wait, there's the pickoff. Oh, let's look at that. Let's look at that slow motion delivery. Boom! Look at that. You still get that knee up there?
Well, no, I don't. I get it up if my cigarettes are that high. I can get up there. It's only my cigarettes.
Okay, so I'm looking at this. This is where you pick them off. I want to see if it's a balk. No, it's pretty good.
Not a balk.
Yeah.
The thing is, he was going on first move and he was done. And see what I mean? You saw him running. He never stopped.
Yeah. I don't remember him being a runner. Was he a runner?
He was actually deceiving. He was deceiving. He wasn't. But obviously, the older he got, and all that, he got heavier as well. But he wasn't a bad runner.
All right, let me skip past Nettles because I want to ask you about the next inning. Look at these 1980s commercials. Because what I want to ask you about, Bill, is there was a fly ball into foul territory, and Gibby had a beat on the play, and I think it was Doug Bear warming up in the pen, on the playing field, and the bullpen didn't warn him for whatever reason, and Gibby hit him and ran into him and dropped the ball. This isn't a World Series game, with everything on the line. I had had to imagine that.
Bavacqua. He had a good series. He had a good series. He had a real good series.
Look at him putting a dip in.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
This is Kennedy.
Okay.
This is Terry.
This is the play.
It was Doug.
Yeah.
It was Doug. What was Doug? Somebody had to be warming up. Well, no, Doug was warming up.
Doug was warming up because Doug comes in for you.
The problem with that, and to be fair, usually a guy's in front of Doug because if it hits him in the back or something. Doug just finished his pitch.
Right. Oh, I'm not blaming Doug.
No, I know. Yes. That's why now we don't have bullpens down the line. We have them closed in for that reason. So the bullpens used to be, Cincinnati had the same thing. They had, we used to go right from the dugout. You open the gate and there's the bullpen. Now that wouldn't be too often, but guy who's pitching, the catcher's back for the one side. Yeah, I don't remember that. That was neat.
Oh, okay. I was thinking, so my son was a pitcher and I was just thinking like, when you get an out like that and it doesn't happen because of something stupid like that, it just
you'll always hear the story, and maybe I wasn't always good at that too, is you're almost I hope versus I'm going to do it. It's sort of like sometimes you wish when you're struggling, sometimes you would look and say, oh my God, I needed that out. And the next thing you either walked him or somebody got a chink hit or somebody then hits a home run. I mean, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. It's like somebody used to always say, the Reds, we were taught that when we come to the minor leagues. You got to be careful when you start, guy boots a ball and then you start, oh, geez, yelling and screaming at the player. Well, he could be yelling and screaming at you for walking people and giving up home runs and everything else. So it's a team concept. It was just an unfortunate, freaky thing. It didn't really affect the game because we lost that game anyway. So
right. You did. Right.
Yeah, it didn't come down to where we had to worry about that.
Yeah. You fortunately won game one. So I wanted to ask you about this. So this was the first game back in Detroit. and the player introductions. And, as somebody who is just a baseball fan and can't even imagine being in this position, what was that like being there, getting your name introduced? And look how small Tommy was.
Yeah, Tommy's still a small guy.
Either you were, I know you're 6'4"?
Yeah, 6'4.5", yeah.
Rosema.
Yeah, the nut.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Hojo.
Obviously, his career took off after he left. It was just the way it goes.
Yeah,
Willie, the Mets. And he's on the Wall of Fame. Rightfully, there's Lopey.
Did you know Lopez went home to his town in Mexico and became the mayor?
Yeah, and then he got killed.
He was killed, unfortunately.
Yes. Yeah, I knew there's Roop.
Roop's got kind of a Reggie Jackson look to him.
But. Yes, well, that's when I played against him when he was with the Angels in '85. Remember, he left and played for them.
Sid.
Swidley. Old Swidley.
Juan Berenguer, people forget about him.
He was Burrito was, like I said, if you were behind the mound with him, he'd fart and burp and everything else. God, you needed a gas mask. I mean, Jesus Christ.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, that was good stories. Yeah, it was good group of guys. Really good group of guys.
I have one more video. I wanna this is game 5. We all know what happened here. Peaches comes out early.
Yeah, I know he did. He just, you know what? Sometimes everybody knows the pitchers. Some guys you better get. Always usually argument. You get them early because if you don't get them early, you're going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
Sometimes just when guys struggle, they just struggle, and unfortunately, it just wasn't a great series for Peaches. Really, it really wasn't. I mean, even when he pitched in San Diego, but I mean, it just it happens. It happens.
Did you rely on Parrish to call all the pitches, or what kind of scouting reports?
Lance, because I was only a 2-pitch pony guy, so I really would be before starting, and if I would have started, I probably would have had more of a, worked on more of a changeup anyway. But I was a situational lefty, so really, it came into lefties throwing the sweepy breaking ball and and the sinker. Yeah. So I mean, really, that was, and the deception. So really, that was really my calling card, really. And when you got into scouting, you realized. When you're watching guys, you always say compare or comp this guy of what he is. And it's funny how you sit behind home plate and you realize that was the role that you were meant to be. And, here we are. Yeah. This is the one that, we always laugh about this. And I say this in a real nice, that was a strike.
That was a strike.
All right. It's all right. But I say this about this game. I said, and Tram was probably right. I'd have taken that ball because there were 2 turtles running. You had Nettles who got the base hit. And Kennedy hit the little ground ball back to me. Well, I could have drop kicked it and he'd have thrown it to first. I said, do you know, just for the hell of it, if I would have got that out, those double play, I would have been the winning pitcher.
Oh, really?
Yes. Because Lopi came in after that for me and he got the win.
Okay.
So, yeah. I mean, so really, it's a moot point. It really doesn't make any difference. So, I mean, but it is funny how this whole thing played out. Is that Nettles got a base hit past, right center, past off a fastball. I think it was I got a base hit right there. And then and this is where Garagiola, I know what you're going to say about the garden hose, and what Russ Nixon, and this is for you, Russ Nixon, about the funky curveball or something, and that was Vince Scully's line about being funkiness and all that stuff. That was
look at that ERA.
Wow, they didn't know me well enough yet. They didn't know me well enough. Yeah, no. Even Rosie said you don't get enough credit because of how important you were when you came over. I said, well, I mean, I thank that, but I said, I told somebody I just hope I don't, fuck up. I hope it's not going to be like Donnie Moore or Billy Buckner. You hate to be that guy.
Moore,
Yeah.
Sure. Oh man, Bill Buckner, man, that's just
that was a hanging breaking ball. Terry wishes he had that one, but this next one I threw it harder, and this is where that was when Gradiola and Vince were talking about Russ Nixon.
Is this stuff just ingrained in your memory, or did you review this recently?
I reviewed this. Years go by. I mean, I just, sometimes you look back and go, did I really pitch? Did I really play? I mean, sometimes you just, and that's where it was.
Yeah.
That was the one that I threw. And then the next one I threw more of a slower one. But this is the one that, Tram was there. And Sparky even came out and says, did it have a hard time getting it out of your glove? I said, no, I just wanted to get the sure out. And he goes, okay, Lopi, because Lopi was coming in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Lopi came in, he was going to be, facing right-handers. And as you remember, Lopi dominated that whole thing until Willie came in. I mean, he dominated them. and he dominated. I mean, so there's Tram. But you did bring up a
Where's
good
Lumpy?
point. Did you ever remember, or how you remember where you were at? Millions and millions of people all over the world were watching the World Series, and it never hit me until everybody just constantly started talking about it. And
Yeah.
you realized, oh my God, you're playing on a stage that most people will never dream of, especially
Yep.
for a young guy like me, where my track record and my career, and to be in that kind of situation. And so after the World Series, the legend, well, when the USA News was out there with the sports department, Eric Brady was the writer. He went to Canisius High School, and he was at the series. And when he asked me, he goes, "Bill, how does it feel to be, win a World Series with the Detroit Tigers?" And I looked at Eric, didn't know Eric at the time. And he makes it, I was on his show at one time before, years ago. And he said, "Do you remember?" He even asked me, "Do you remember?" I said, "Oh, I remember everything I said." He goes, "Well, just think about what your answer was about being in the biggest stage of all baseball." And I just heard that the Buffalo Bills beat the Seattle Seahawks. And Eric looked at me and goes, "Bill, you're at the biggest stage of the." I said, "So you understand, Eric, I've been a Tiger for 2.5, 3 months. I've been a Buffalo Bills fan since the day I was born."
Yeah. Oh, there
I
you are
read
on the
that
lower
and
right.
I started dying. I said, "Oh my God, that is what you will hear out of a Bills fan's mouth or whatever."
Right.
Like that was great. It made me smile ear to ear.
So Willie gets him to pop up to
Yeah,
Herndon and left.
To Larry, right?
And Bill, you're one of the first guys out of the dugout. There we go.
There it is. Larry almost looked like he was going to fall down, but he got it. Larry.
All right, so
Yes.
there's Bill. I'll highlight you in the video. Look at that hair. Look at that
Yeah.
hair.
And people don't realize this story gets even better. The fans started knocking out the center field wall, and as you can see, here they come. And
Yeah.
Sparky made a comment. "I know you guys want to celebrate, but we
Look
can
at Gibby.
celebrate." And look at Gibby, typical Gibby.
Yeah.
But he goes, "I really don't want you to come running and chasing out onto the field." Well,
Yeah.
we weren't going. It's first, we're all going to do it. Here they
Yeah.
come. Look at these people.
Yeah.
I got hit in the head with a camera.
Really?
And I was going down, and Lance grabbed my pants. If I would have been there, I'd have been trampled. But
Oh.
Lance grabbed me by the pant leg, and then we ran into the locker room, and obviously we were done
Yeah.
with that.
I
But
missed
that
this by
place
one
was
game.
oh,
That
that
could have
was
been
a
me out there.
zoo.
Yeah.
And then watching
Yep.
the buses turn over, San Diego's trying to get to the airport, the fires and everything else. Oh my God!
Yeah, not the
that place
proudest
was-
moment. I don't know why people
No,
have
you
to
wouldn't.
riot when you win something.
No, you wouldn't. And remember, my mother went in the press box. I told her, "Go in the press bus." And my brother and me watched it from the top. And then we walked back to the Pontchartrain. Being at War Memorial, and that's even that story. The last guy ever to pitch at a winning game at War Memorial Stadium. And the one guy is a big autograph seeker, and he has the ball. And I said, he goes, "Could you do me a favor? Could you sign?" I said, and I said, somebody goes, "Well, what would you like?" I said, I don't, the good Lord has been good. I don't need your money. I said, "If you've got the ball." He goes, "Because you got the save." I said, and I forget the guy's name because he still has a place in Grand Island. I said, "So you understand." So I don't want to make sure you understand you're wrong. I did not get the save. I got the win. And he goes, "Oh, that's even better." And Carl Willis always thought that he got the save, the last game ever played at the Rock Pile. And I laughed. I said, "Carl, I know it's going to kill you, hurt your feelings. But the guy that got the save was Rob Dibble. Dibble got the save." And I was playing for the Nashville Sounds. So that was comical. I played 12 years in the minors, up and down. Like I said before, I ran out of uniforms. I said, don't get me wrong. I got the major league service, and I was blessed to be able to think. But I was a lifetime minor league. And Frank Pastore one time got sent down. He was in the big leagues for 7 years, and he was in Oklahoma City. And he looked at me. He goes, "How do you do this?" And I looked at Frank. I said, "Frank, this is survival. You come down here, and hopefully you get back in the big leagues." I said, I hate to say it, those charter flights and not the gravy train, but you've been so accustomed to be there for 6, 7 years, and which is wonderful. But I've lived my whole life being up and down, 2 full years, yes, in the big leagues, 83 and 85. But it's just survival, and that's what you do, and you just got to be hoped and blessed that you get the opportunity and not get hurt at the wrong time either to play in the big leagues. But I got a lot of guys don't understand when they start talking about big league. I said, no, don't do that. I said, we've all played. When somebody says semi-pro, I said, don't ever use that word to me ever again. Semi-pro. These are pros. They might be minor leaguers, but they're still pros.
Right.
So, again, we all know the Grand Leaguers. We get all that stuff. And I mean, even the time that I played in the Caribbean finals for Dominican Republic, and I was rooming, the only time it's ever played in the history of the Caribbean finals was played at the old Orange Bowl. And I was playing for Dominican. We won it. My roommate was Marquise Grissom, if you can remember, the outfielder for Atlanta.
Sure.
And and Marquise taught me a lesson too. We came off the plane because we got paid in cash. We didn't get B's, or I should say pesos. And so he said, put it in your sock, meaning you put it on the back of your heel and put your sock on in your shoe. So we were both limping off the plane getting into Miami from Santo Domingo. Now, they didn't give a shit about me, but they were worried about Marquise. Is he all right? Is he hurt? And we laughed. I said, we had all our $100 bills. You'd have to cut our foot off to get the money. So I learned a great deal about Marquise telling me how to bring our thousands of dollars home coming out of counting to minutes. But that was the last team ever to win. And they tried to bring in the salsa and the merengue and Venezuela and Mexico and all that stuff. But that was the only time it ever was played. I forget, that was 1990. I think it was 1990, maybe. And we were there, and we won the championship for Escogido in Dominican Republic for the Caribbean. The only time it's ever. So it's comical thinking of even winning over in Kitchener for the intercounty, or winning in Dominic, or winning it. And even the other story. I got sent out for disciplinarian in 1978, and I was back in Shelby, and I was going to quit and everything else. And then I flew to Eugene, and I had Greg Riddock, who managed a little bit in the big leagues as well, but he was my manager in Eugene. And it turned my whole career around. I could dance, laugh. They thought I was the lefty, the bird from the left. I said, there's only one bird. That was 1976. And I remember watching him in high school at some bar in Buffalo. And but it made me have fun. I was dancing and twirling, and some of my teammates said, my dad's in town, could you do an extra twirl? And half the time I didn't know what I was doing, but just enjoying the game like it used to be for me as a kid. Well, we ended up playing a team called Grace Harbor, and they were independent. And there was a guy on that team, which I found out later. I knew the manager because he scouted for years, Billy Brick, who eventually now is dead, unfortunately, but he ran the game a long, legendary guy from Chicago. On that roster, if you ever get a chance to look at the roster who won the championship in 1978, Grace Harbor beating Eugene Emeralds, it's a best of three. We played the first game. I pitched. I said 4-2. Billy Brick says 5-3, but they beat us. The other two games were rained out. So they were officially the winner of the Northwest League. The guy that was on that team, that was a team that you could pay to play. His name is William Murray. His first name, as we all know, is Bill Murray.
Really?
He went 1 for 2. I said to Bill Brick, I said, there's no way, I'll never live this down if Bill Murray got a base hit off of me, because that can't happen. That I should never got out of A-ball. Well, he didn't get a hit off me. But if you go look at the roster in 1978, the winning team, I think it was Grace Harbor. They'll tell you the winner. And look at the roster. You'll see a name called William Murray.
Okay.
And that was Bill. Wow. That's Bill Murray.
How about that? Did you have a roommate on the road in '84 for the Tigers? Or were you guys?
No, I'm not going to get into personal stuff with this, but this is probably a really good story too. So I'll keep it. It doesn't necessarily. Well, it does necessarily. Well, I'll give it anyway. In 1984, that's when I got sent down.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest tributes you can have when you have a good year, part of your contract negotiations for the following year, we used to have roommates. But if you had a really good year, part of your contract negotiation is a room on the road by yourself.
Okay.
So the year I had in 83 was a very good year. And in 84, part of the contract was that I had to be room on the road by myself.
Okay.
Well, as we know, I got sent down in minor leagues in 84.
Right before the trade.
Yes. Let's just get to where I was pitching, though. And fast forward a little bit, we were in Denver, the old Mile High Stadium where the Zephyrs played. And I get a knock on the door. and I look in, and it's goddamn Tommy Lawless. And now we know the famous Tommy Lawless home run with St. Louis that just went over the fence, so he's always remembered for that homer. We all came up to the minors. Anyway, he goes, I can't stand my roommate. Do you mind? I said, oh my God, I finally get my contract, even if I'm in the minors on my road. I said, well, get in the room. So not to get personal with this nonsense anyway, but he's in the room and the phone rings around 6:30 in the morning, Denver time. And he's not moving. I said, Jesus Christ. I said, I pick up the phone. Hello? It's Chief Bender. Chief Bender was, minor league coordinator and all that stuff.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
wow.
Chief Bender, he was for all the years with the Reds.
Oh.
And Chief goes, is Tommy Lawless in your room? I said, yeah. I go, yeah, you want to talk to him, Chiefy? He goes, yeah. I said, Lawman, it's for you. I can't believe it. It's my room, but he wants you. So he gets on the phone. Goes back to bed. And with me, I want to know all the. I said, wait a minute here. What did he ask you? He goes, I'm the player to be named later for the Pete Rose trade. He got traded to Denver, and he was supposed to play in the Denver. That was Montreal's AAA. He was the player to be named later for Pete Rose.
Oh, wow.
I said, Jiminy Christmas. I said, Tommy, you're something. That's something they'll always be remembered. Traded for Pete Rose, and you can stay in my room because you know what? They're going to be at home, and I'm leaving. So you keep this room. Jeez. Oh, look at those, Scotty. Waterbury Reds. Oh my God. And Cincinnati's things. Oh Lord.
Yeah,
only God would watch those pictures now, for God's sake.
But even this card up here on the lower right, look at the deception, because you bring that ball down so low back behind you.
Right.
I could see how you were pretty effective.
Yeah.
And I wanted to look at this 84 card. Looks like you've got a nice little, not quite a Willie Hernandez kind of chaw there going in that.
Let me see if I can see it. Well, it's, you know what it is? It's above mine is below that, so it's not really showing the
sorry.
The cards. Those are the Reds cards. I see the 84 is flares.
Yep.
Yes, I see those. But yeah, it's gonna go up. Yeah.
So I was curious. Did you have any say in the photos that they use for cards?
No. Tops. No, flares and Dahmers came in later on, but
right.
No, and everybody talks about what the guys are getting today, and that's fine. When you had your first baseball card, you got a check.
Yeah.
For $5.
That's what it was.
Yeah, we got $5, but it was a baseball card.
Man.
Yeah, there it is.
Okay, so I was curious if did you have to sign an individual contract, or was that just part of the MLB?
It was part of the agreement, I think, and back then. And then obviously things were opened up, and Topps was controlled everything, as we know. And then here comes Dahmers and flares, and then other cards came in later on. But but that's a negotiation. I'm sure that the players finally realized you're using our captions, and we should be able to be making money off of what you guys are getting. Right. And so, that's part of life. I mean, we were all still thrilled. We didn't even care as much as what we. You were just thrilled to be there. We weren't making it, just like endorsements. The Reds were hard to have endorsements because it was black spikes. It didn't show you couldn't get Puma or something because they didn't have white, or like when you went to Philadelphia, you had maroon, or if you played for the Cubs, it was, the bluish, purple, those kind of, it showed the color for the sponsorship. So that's why the Reds later on, when I came back in '87, they got red spikes and everything else. So then sponsorship, guys would use, I had Pony. Some people would have Rawlings or Wilson. They were always too generic. And then SSK, and then other club companies. It depends on what they would give you. And nowadays, I'm sure it's just like doing autograph signings. Trying to get Justin Verlander to sign right now is not knocking on him. It's that you're not going to get him for make X amount of dollars. I mean, you could offer him $15,000 and it doesn't matter. He's not coming.
Mm-hmm.
So because they don't have to. They don't have to.
Right.
Yeah, that's all right. That's up to them. Yeah, the Rochester Red Wings, and there's Tidewater Tide.
Tidewater Tides. I have these cards. I have that Tidewater Tides card. I don't know how long you were there, but
remember I told you, I was like a guest appearance. I came and I went at the same time. The bus was still running when I was, coming off the field, and I was going into another destination.
And then Jay found this. This was a sticker at 84.
Yes.
You share a card with Petrie when you were on the Reds, which I thought was cool.
Yes. Yeah, I saw this one. Yeah, that's actually was good. I did. I've seen most. The one card that I always got a chance I wanted to really see and view was a card that was it was public. They call them stamps there. And that's when I had a beard and everything else.
Okay, I don't have that.
It was
one.
in Venezuela. Well, you wouldn't have it. And I asked somebody, I said, I'd love to see that card because everybody who knows. And I finally, it's a sticker. I finally got it. The reason I wanted it, they misspelled my name. It was like Shearer, and it was funny. So I always said, that would always be, but I've seen mostly all the cards that has been published, photos and other things I have seen them. So there hasn't been too many things that I've, the pictures and.
I grew up in the Detroit area, so
we had
the Coke cans. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I got
got your 189 ERA on there. Pretty cool.
Yeah, that is that is, like I said, it really is cool if you like when there's an article that Roger Craig said, and it was like, who was the MVP and who was the most improved player or overachieved, and then they had another quote that says, who was the luckiest player on in the major leagues, and it says Bill Scherrer.
Wow.
And
because he got traded, right for the
traded and being in the minor leagues to be traded to the best team in baseball.
Okay.
So
this photo, this I don't know if you've seen this one before. This was 2020. Jay.
Well, this is the one that the guy who made this, they photoed this and then they sold these things on auctions and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody would everybody's that it's in that picture. They would sign. And then they would put, 84 world champs. They're the person.
Can you see my mouse?
No? Yeah, right. In the
middle. So this is Bill with the big fro. Is this Doug Bear?
Yeah, Doug's below me.
Okay, and is that Barbara Garbe? Who is? I don't know who that is behind, like over your left shoulder.
That's Barbie jumping in the air.
Okay,
he's way up in the air. That's Barbie.
Okay, and then Bergie and Parrish and Baker. Yeah, that's a great photo, man.
No, it is.
Between that one and the one of Gibson with his arms in the air raised, that's
that was that became a legendary thing. That made all the pictures and everything else with his hands up in the air and all that roar and all that stuff. Typical Gibby roaring. I got more of a kick out of him seeing his helmet fall off and he's grab it. And they said, screw this. He's just jumping up and down. I mean, he was something. Like I said. A pleasure to be being associated with those guys. Besides teammates, I'm very happy and blessed to be able to say that I was a Tiger, I guess.
I'm grateful too, man. It was a big part of my life growing up, and it's an honor to be able to talk to you today.
If you want to see more of Bill, he took part in a Tiger Talk interview where you can hear him discuss everything from hitting his own teammate Dave Bergman with a pitch and putting him on the DL, to his story about why his Tigers World Series ring is different from the others. I'm putting a link to that interview in the video notes. And thanks for watching.